Hi, welcome to Smokin with Swami. I'm Swami Chaitanya.
I'm Nikki Listretto, and we have a very special guest today who we've just been wanting to be on the show for so long. Chris Van Hook from Clean Green Certified, who was here because...
Well, he's coming to do two things. First of all, we have our annual Clean Green Certification Inspection, where they take a soil sample, he looks at the leaves and so on, checks out our trimming and everything right. But also now he is one of the certifiers for Mendocino County's Urgency 9.31 program, so he's out to make sure that we have 72 plants and
99 plants.
99 plants, right. 99 plants, and then also our drying and cleaning area are all up to code. So not up to code, up to standards.
Right.
Up to standards.
Right.
So anyway, how did you get started with the Clean Green program? Because it's kind of taken off in the last few years.
Well, it has. And Nikki and Swami, thank you very much for allowing me to be on your show. I tell you, it's an honor.
It's an honor.
And, when you asked me to be on, I was thrilled. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. We have two companies. One is a USDA organic certification company, and the other is the Clean Green program. And it started back in 2003 when a little old lady from Pasadena called and said, can I certify her cannabis as organic?
Huh.
And so I contacted the California Organic Program, and they said, yes, go ahead and treat it like any other agricultural crop. But the federal program said, no, it's not a recognized federal agricultural crop, therefore cannabis is not eligible for USDA organic certification. So this lady kept encouraging me, isn't there something that you can do? And I said, sure, we'll go ahead and start the Clean Green program. So the Clean Green program is based on the USDA National Organic Program. We don't make up answers in our program. We're simply bringing the existing organic, agricultural, and food handling regulations into the cannabis industry.
I see. Food handling also is important for the dispensary and the people selling.
Well, food handling starts actually at the farm. If you're growing row crops and you want to wash them and package them and sell them at your own fruit stand, you still have to have certain standards in place.
I see.
And that's why under the Clean Green program, it's not only an agricultural inspection, but it also follows through to the processing, on-farm processing, all the way up until it's final packaged at the farm. And that includes, not only does it include a thorough review of your inputs, a thorough review of your soil conditions, as well as an agricultural inspection of the crop, but it's also, we follow that crop through to processing. How is it harvested? How is it hung and dried? Is there a hand wash station nearby? Is the processing room cleaned prior to use? And then trimming. Once it's trimmed, are the trim bins cleaned between uses? Are the containers that you bulk store it in cleaned between uses? Is there new food grade packaging used in the final packaging? So it really follows from seed all the way through to final packaging at the end of the farm. Mm-hmm. That's the crop production certification, which you guys have been now for 6 or 7 years, and we greatly appreciate the repeat business. I know I'll just say now that you guys were one of the first real pioneers in our program when it was small enough and not many people believed in it. So we really appreciate the repeat business.
Well, for us also, the repeat is that's also a certification that it's a value added to the process that year after year after year we have been meeting those standards, right?
Absolutely. And so the result is greater consumer confidence. And then we have a processor handler certification that takes the product, once it's received at a dispensary or a processor, they have to have their certain requirements in place. Again, clean food handling standards, hand wash stations nearby, the trim shears need to be clean, the packaging needs to be, food grade packaging, but it also needs to have, lot numbers and trackability so that when the consumer sees the Clean Green sticker on a product, they know that it has been third-party certified from the final retail packaging all the way through the processor handler to the bulk receipt from the farm, and from that bulk receipt bag all the way back to the seed or cutting. But there's other things in the Clean Green program besides just that. And that's the nice thing, that's where we differ from the USDA Organic program. There's other components. Number one, to be Clean Green certified, you need to have a legal water source, and you need to have water conservation practices in place. Yeah. And certainly with the drought raging across the west of the United States, that is of ultimate concern. There's also a carbon footprint reduction program in place. Every Clean Green certified farmer and processor needs to have a carbon footprint reduction program in place, and that program needs to improve every year. So that's another big issue. There's also now...
That's like solar power is what you're talking about, primarily, as much as possible.
It could be solar power. It could be... We have people addressing it in many different ways. We've got people... years ago, the standard was you use your soil once, you take it to the landfill. So since that time, we've had people re-amending their soils, and it used to be when we started that, of course, people were bringing liquid fertilizers from Europe, which is 95% water. Well, the carbon footprint of that alone is huge. So there's been a shift to the dry products and dry inputs as well.
Right.
So people can address the particular carbon footprint of their own farm and reduce that each year. There's also a fair labor component in the Clean Green program, and that was added to the program last year in 2015, when we heard that there were a lot of organizations that were using basically captivated trapped laborers in...
Oh yeah, we've heard stories
conditions.
of people meeting in town. They're blindfolded. They drive around for an hour or so. They can't leave the property. Stuff like that. You hear that too?
Absolutely, we've heard worse than that. And so we review the conditions for the trimmers and the workers. And so really, there's the agricultural standards that are very closely mimic the organic standards. There's the food handling standards that mimic standard food handling practices in every other form of agriculture. A carbon footprint reduction program, a water conservation program, and a fair labor component to the program.
Yeah. So the state law now is also requiring workman's comp. It's going to be required for trimmers if you have, and that sort of contracting and so on.
Well, absolutely. As the cannabis industry matures and becomes more legal, it's going to be moving into the same framework that every other form of agriculture has to use. And so there will be, if they're not independent contractors, they'll be required to have workman's comp, etc. Right. So really, cannabis is agriculture. So it needs to move into and be placed in agriculture.
Absolutely.
Right. And all those mechanisms and agencies and regulatory agencies are already in place to do that. And they have the expertise to do that, right?
Absolutely. When I attend State Department agricultural meetings, they often say we're fully competent and fully comfortable with regulating this new crop as soon as we are tasked. So the people that think that they're going to develop their own programs or they're going to develop their own standards are, in my opinion, a little bit naive, because when I speak with the state agencies, they're ready to regulate it as soon as they're tasked.
Well, that's what the state law last year is doing. It's put cannabis cultivation into the Department of Food and Agriculture, right?
Right.
And then the other one for processing and all of that, testing and manufacture, that's under the, which one is that?
Well, it's also under the
Consumer
California
Food and Drug.
Yeah.
Right, and then the dispensaries under the Consumer Affairs, I believe.
Right.
And so those regulations and agencies are already there doing that for every other industry.
Right, for every other industry, every other agricultural crop.
So one of the big things people have been talking about is the environmental impact of cannabis growing. And we know it can be, really negative because there are people who are responsible. But I think part of the Clean Green program is to make sure that we are somewhat working towards a harmonious environment, reducing the carbon footprint, and all of those ways that we're... So more and more, if you can take things from your own farm to use as your amendments or as your mulches or things like that, then there's no risk of bringing in some disease from outside, right?
Some disease. The other thing that we see is that when plants are over-fertilized and over-watered, that often brings in pest problems and different problems. So then those farms tend to require more inputs, more pesticide sprays. Under the organic program or the Clean Green program, they need to be, naturally based insecticides. But nonetheless, the farms that we see that need the least inputs are the ones that are almost doing the least in their growing mechanisms. And we often see, it's just like basil or garlic. A well-fertilized, well-irrigated basil often doesn't have the taste and flavor and texture of basils that grow on marginal soils on hillsides, rocky hillsides. They always end up having better flavor, better taste. I see that the same in cannabis as well.
Yeah.
So
no, we've noticed that as judges in the Emerald Cup. They quite often, the winner, not often, but sometimes it has happened, will be somebody's sort of semi-tortured plant.
Right.
This one just didn't look healthy, and so we brought it close to the house and took care of it because, and then whoa, it's only made a quarter pound, but whoa, knockout.
Right,
You know?
we see that quite a bit.
And it's actually the same thing applies to baking. I find sometimes, if I forget I have a cake in the oven, you forget to put you make a mess. It turns out better when you fix it. I don't know.
Yeah.
The tortured method works sometimes.
It does.
Yeah.
And like I tell people, there are huge environmental consequences and damages that have been brought on by the illegal cannabis industry. And most of them are because it's been kept illegal. And just like buying, fair trade, shade grown organic coffee or organic, cotton, the consumer really has a lot to play in the environmental consequences of their cannabis growing. And what I like to tell people is that you're either buying, an illegal weed or a clean green certified cannabis. You're not sure if you're supporting the drug cartels.
Right.
You're not sure if you're supporting growing indoors with minors in the house. So really, a consumer can reach with greater confidence with a clean green certified product.
And you were telling us earlier about how some people have actually tried to just pay you off to get the certification. I mean, I'm glad to know you didn't do it because that means ours has that much more validity. But
yeah, that's been a funny story a couple of times. People have called and said, we don't really want you up at our farm. We don't want people up there. Can you just mail us a certificate?
Just mail us.
And that's not how we run the program. Once we lose the reputation of the program and the standards, it all just falls apart.
Yeah.
So no, we've actually turned down about $15,000 worth of work this year alone for people that are either pumping out of the creeks or can't tell me where their cannabis is going or where is it being grown. So no, the whole program requires an application to fill out what fertilizers you're using, what inputs you're using. You have to have an arguably defendable legal outlet for your cannabis. So the farms that call and say, can you just mail us a certificate? We'll put the money in your bank. Aren't
when you're used to black market everything, you're used to black market. Yeah. But look at this. Really, look at our label here. It means so much to have this clean green certified on this jar because it means something.
Well, this whole jar, this whole packaging, I think, is really where the small farmer needs to go. I mean, if you look at it, first of all, it's got a branded name that's recognized by consumers now internationally because of your publicity and whatnot. Yeah. But it also says right now it has the harvest date, it has the county that it's grown in, it has the appellation, the type of soils and region it's grown in. And the other thing, it's sun-grown with organic methods, cultivated from local heritage seeds. So often, people get high-sided on what's the latest brand, what's the latest strain, what was written up in the publications.
Or what's the highest THC?
What's the highest THC?
That's all they care about.
But really, in Mendocino County, there are so many wonderful geneticists that have been growing cannabis for 35 years.
Amazing.
And they've just developed
here.
hybrids that are just some of the finest cannabis in the world.
Right. Speaking of that, I wanted to get back to something else you're saying about people, that the consumer has something to say in how the industry is going to develop. Because I have a feeling that many people who have had sort of bad experiences with cannabis in the past, whatever it was that caused them to feel a certain way, it could well have not been the cannabis.
It could have not been.
It could have been the pesticides on it.
Absolutely.
It could have been the bad vibes that people put on it. It could have been the way it was grown. They didn't flush out the nitrogen. All of these things, the whole concept of I'm going to get as much out of it as possible. And so the negative experience someone has is actually not because of the cannabis, but what's the negative part of it.
That's absolutely possible.
I like to say that I've been in agriculture for over 45 years. And coming from a conservative background, I can say that a lot of people can grow okay cannabis, but you can't grow really world-class, excellent cannabis unless you love the plant. I have never seen an agricultural plant that responds to the human contact and the human way that it's grown like the cannabis plant. And I'm not saying that from a spiritual or esoteric manner. I'm saying that, from a conservative agricultural person, I've never seen a plant that responds to that.
We have it inside of us, too, the endocannabinoids we have.
Right.
It's the most symbiotic plant.
Right. And so, like I like to say, you can grow good cannabis easily, but you can't grow world-class cannabis unless you really love and really work with that
That's
plant.
really true.
That's so true. Yeah. And again, we see that as judges in the Emerald Cup.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always somebody
and
who
it's small
loves their
crops
plants.
and small plants.
Right.
Not always small plants. but
Yeah.
small crops.
Right.
That's what I'm not. Many people up here that they're so worried about. Oh, the big guys are going to come in and take us over, and Philip Morris and blah blah blah. We've heard this for years, but I've always felt like they will. That's going to happen. But then there's us.
Right.
It's a different different game.
It's not about size.
It's about quality.
It's about quality.
Size doesn't matter in this case.
Well, we want a big yield. You do want a big yield to cover the cost because it's getting more and more expensive just to cover your basic costs.
It is getting more expensive, but they do say that cannabis will be mass produced, and we see that in a number of states. We're certifying cannabis in California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Nevada. We've got applications in many states back east as well.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. And some of them are very large farms, but they will never be growing the world-class cannabis. I think just like wine, or even more than wine, there's always going to be that niche market. For
and you've
people
got to
that
grow it
Absolutely.
organically, biologically to get the
It has
best.
to be.
That's the crazy thing about cannabis.
has
To
to
do
be.
it, to grow the best, you've got to do it naturally, organically, biologically.
It's interesting. When we started this program in 2004, actually, is when we started it, people said, oh, you can't grow cannabis organically. You can't grow good cannabis organically. And I'm very proud to say that in 2010, the San Francisco Medical Cannabis Cup, the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup moved to San Francisco. And a Clean Green grower has won the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup every year it's been here in the United States. In 2010, 11,
That's amazing.
12,
That's amazing.
13, 2014,
It makes a difference.
15,
It
and
truly
16.
does.
Our growers have won
Man.
the first place in the Emerald Cup in the past 2 years. They've placed in the top 5% the past 5 years, 7 years.
Fantastic.
Won third place in the Seattle High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. We just won the Oregon Classic up in Portland a couple of weeks ago. The
That's
San
awesome.
Francisco Patient's Choice
Yeah.
Cup in
Well, it's
2012.
first of all a testament
That's
to
amazing.
Clean Green, but it's also a testament to the fact that organic is the way. to
Right.
grow
And
the
it's so
best.
funny how they
Well,
won't let us use the word,
Right.
right? The FDA won't let us use the word. I think you told me we have to say grown with
Organic
organic
methods.
methods.
Absolutely,
Which is
yeah.
what it says on the
Absolutely,
jar.
no, that's perfect.
And
But
but yet it makes such a difference.
But what it's done
Yeah.
is it's answered the question unequivocally, is that not only can you grow good cannabis organically, but you grow the world's finest cannabis
Yes,
organically.
yes,
And that's
yes.
how it's been taken. Just the complexity of the soils, the complexity of the organic fertilizers, all results in a much better product.
Well, see, also you were saying before, in the old days, people used to just throw away their soil after a year, take
Right.
it to the dump. But now we've learned that actually what we're doing is growing soil.
Right. You
And
grow
the
soil.
biology of the soil, the fungal matter, the all these nematodes and all these other things that are in there, putting biochar and bokashi and,
Right.
and organic, what do they call them, indigenous microorganisms, all this stuff, means that your soil's alive, right?
Right.
And just vibrating with energy. And then the plant pulls that up. So I grow the soil, the soil grows the plant.
Absolutely. We see that when we get, hydroponic type farmers that are growing in a sterile environment and adding, synthetic fertilizers. And so they're only getting 3 or 4 of the fertilizers that plant needs. And organically grown cannabis plants getting hundreds of different fertilizers, hundreds of different nutritions. And so that all results in a better product.
We're so thankful for you,
So,
Chris, in our
yeah,
lives. Really.
Yeah, thanks.
It's just
And also,
great. And for everything you've done
it's
for
just great to
everyone.
have you here and talk with you. We always have a good time
Yeah.
together and so
Man,
on. So.
I always
you
look
for
forward
coming.
to this inspection. This is always one of my favorite of the year. You
Yeah.
guys have a beautiful
Okay.
place.
Well, thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
That's
So
it.
enjoyed
Join
having
us
you
next
here.
time. Smoking with Swami and Chris Van Hook from Clean Green and Nikki and
Deepu
Deepu the Wonder
slept through it
Dog.
again.
Slept through it again.